Hello there. Welcome to episode 122 of JagaVision. I'm your host, Jared Nyberg. I am co-owner of JagaSilk with my wife Mew. And we have our show going now for 122 weeks, just talking tea, talking with different guests, sometimes a show like today where I go solo, which I've been doing since the summer for a number of the shows, just talking over different topics. This is going to be another one of those short shows. And I thought it'd be really cool if we could get Sister Speak to join us. We are trying. We'll see if that happens. I know she's trying. She's trying. Okay. But oh, that's lovely that we have excellent sound, says Lorianne T. We are going to go and show you a little bit about our matcha mill. So I actually have two mills going. I don't know if you can hear them in the background or not, but that whirring sound is the mills. So if you can see that there. Yeah, so I'm going to go over to that area. I'm going to show you a little bit about, yeah, let's just see if I can keep that. Okay, so so you can see what I'm doing right now is I'm milling on this what we call our terada, and then we also have another mill here. It's our, if you can see that okay, yeah, that's our west. So we have two different companies that we're working with for our mills, and they work very differently than one another. So this one here, our terada, essentially you have the tencha going through the top here. Thank you. You have the tencha going through the top here. This is what the tencha looks like. You can see that okay? There we go. So that's what the tencha looks like. And this is the deveined and destemmed leaf. It's just the pure part of the leaf. And that's what's getting fed into this hopper, fed into these plates. And so it has these plates that are rotating. And I think you guys have seen this before. I've shown off the mill a little bit in the past. And what essentially is happening is you have instead of like a burr grinder, having the plates move circular like that is helping to maintain a particular texture. That texture is this very nice round, smooth flavor that we want. If you mill on a burr grinder, under a microscope, those particles are going to be square in shape, and our tongues can pick up on that, even if it's milled quite fine. So having this circulatureness is going to be really helpful. Okay. Another really cool thing about this mill is, and I'll try and actually show you here. Pardon the. So this is, you can get right in there. You can see the. Can you see that okay? That's the tencha getting milled, and then it's basically becoming matcha. And we always measure our matcha on a grind gauge. And the grind gauge, there's not a whole lot left in the hopper. We're just at the end of the day here. But can you see that okay? So that's the tencha going through. Right, and that's getting milled to less than 10 microns. Our other mill is the west. This also works with a similar technology, except that the plates are much smaller. So this is actually a much smaller unit. It is milling a very similar texture. The nice thing about this unit is that I can control the revolutions per second. So I have to set it for, a particular. So today, for the first time in a long time, I've changed the RPM down to 110. One moment. Okay. Here, let me see. Wonder if I can make my. Yeah, okay. Anyway. Oh, sorry. One moment. Oh, there we go. I'm off in 10 minutes. Sorry, for those who are watching, I don't want to make you dizzy. But yeah, this is essentially our mill is milling through and getting a very similar texture. It's a much smaller unit. The plates are inside of this box here. You can't see them as clearly. If I was going to put, a matcha can next to it for reference, that is essentially the size. You know, you can get 1, 2, 3 and a bit matcha cans across, whereas the plates for this unit are about here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 matcha cans across. So even the units themselves are it's a much larger kind of width on this one. The plates themselves are about not a whole lot longer in diameter than this tin, whereas the plates in the Terada are significantly larger. I'd say easily double the diameter of the West. The West has a cool thing happening in the top in that it's got this auger system, and the auger essentially pushes the matcha slowly down into, I don't know if you can see in there, okay? Hard to see, isn't it? Wonder if I can give you some light here. No, apparently not. Okay, in here, essentially that auger is dropping the tea into a little mini hopper, and then that's falling onto the plates, and then those are going down the chute, and they're creating this this matcha over here. In terms of texture, I find that it's a lot easier to get finer matcha on the Terada. The West, I have to really push it to get a similar, like the texture that I want, and it makes a really ugly grinding sound. That sound is coming from the West, and that's a result of me really kind of overclocking it, or like really pushing it hard to get that finer texture. And again, I think I've shown our guests the grind gauge that we use, but we have a unit that looks like this, and we make a sludge, and we run it. You can actually see in 2020 I did an episode on the Tea Festival Revival where I was showing, and you can find that on YouTube, where I was showing how we use this, but we essentially make a really strong sludge, and then we run it along this channel, and that lets us make sure that we're below the if you can see it here, the 10 micron count. It needs to be less than 10 microns to be a matcha, and that's why it's taken us so long to find mills that work. Normally your matcha is milled on these really old granite grinders that are moved with a robotic arm, essentially. 1 revolution per second, 40 grams an hour. But these actually produce more like a kilogram every hour and a half to 2.5 hours, depending on the condition of the plates and the type of tencha that we're milling. Another really cool thing that's happening is that they're both hooked up back here to water lines, and those water lines are being pumped to this chiller, and this chiller is set at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 10 degrees centigrade, and we change that temperature, and that's that water temperature is being pumped inside of the plates, so it's not touching the tea, and that keeps the plates at a particular temperature. And we actually find that depending on the tea, that will taste better or worse. Right now, having one mill that has much smaller plates and one mill that has much larger plates does make for challenges in finding something consistent. And that, you know, if we want it to taste good, we want to make sure that it's consistent, right? And so what we end up having to do is we adjust this RPM to make the plates run a little bit slower, a little hotter, to increase or decrease the friction, so that we can find a flavor profile that's closer to the Terada, where we don't really have that kind of control. This one is locked in at around 90 revolutions per second. So yeah, trying to figure out how to make them both kind of produce a very similar matcha. I would say that the West is, again, the hardest one for us. It backs up a bit. It's a little bit slower. It's smaller plates. It's also half the price of this guy here. And this one is not as pretty to look at, but it's a workhorse, and it does the job really well. They've redesigned the plates to make them a little bit harder and more resilient to hotter temperatures, etc., so they don't scar when things get a little bit too hot. And these guys too, they've redesigned their plates to deal with some issues that were happening when you ran the unit dry by accident. It would break. So, but yeah, it's producing beautiful stuff. We were just tasting them today. If you want to try out some of the teas that we're milling on them today, just finished these labels. You can check those out. This is the Okumidori Okubo, and this is the Yabukita Ame Furi. What's cool about these guys is that they're both toasted in our tea roaster, and they have been milled here, of course, but they are a pair of matchas that we actually got right before they were ready to be fired. So yeah, we're pretty happy about that, so you want to check those out. Okay, those are the two mills. I hope that was interesting for those who are watching. I'm going to switch back to my live scene here, and I hope you enjoyed that. So that's just my two different mills. There's the Terada and the West, and they're both producing kind of different, slightly different textures, slightly different flavors. If you look on your package that you get from us of matcha, there is going to be a little T or a little W in the top right of the pouch label, and that's going to be your sign of which mill it was milled on. So if you have a JagaSilk package at home and you're burning to know what is with this little T or this little W on the top right of the pouch, that's a T. We mostly mill on the Terada, so you're more likely than not going to have a little T on the top right, but every once in a while you might see us mill a little bit on the West, and you'll be able to see that. We also go to spot a second mill. It won't be in operation probably until later in the year or in the new year. But that one you'll see a T2 on the top right, and that will let you know that it's the second mill that we got in. So we're going to try and track that information. We find it interesting. So hope you do too. If you have any questions about the mills, or if you want to provide any feedback on the different textures that you're tasting, etc., please don't hesitate to do so. You can ask questions in the comment section. You can let us know what you're thinking about the textures and flavors that we're bringing out. As an example, I once had, when we were first milling using the chiller, I was told that the matcha was just didn't have enough flavor structure. So if you put it into, for example, matcha latte, there wasn't enough acidity for it to taste good. And not that we want to mill for a matcha latte, we want it to taste good as a traditional. And you can make it so cold and so smooth that you kind of lose the character of the tea. So we have found that a little bit of heat goes a long way. Too much heat, and of course you burn away the umami and it loses all its sweetness, but not enough heat, and you kind of end up lacking in acidity or just overall flavor structure. I don't even know what ends up not being developed, but you definitely lose out on flavor depth. So we do make sure that we are tasting every kilogram that we mill, and we adjust as we go. You know, their plates are going to wear out slowly over time, so we need to make micro adjustments as we go. We're going to be working with different tencha. The tencha itself will change over time. The different batches will present different challenges and different benefits. So yeah, it's a process of just trying to understand the different teas that we're milling. But we're very interested in your feedback as well. But go on our webpage, jagasilk.com. We should by Friday, I think, have these up. Is the Yabukita Ame Furi and the Okumidori Okubo, both by Takaki-san, both micro lots. Yabukita is a cultivar, Okumidori is a cultivar. Ame Furi and Okubo are actually the names of the micro lots. So they're what Takaki-san calls those particular tea growing areas where he grows those cultivars. So he could grow the same cultivar in a different area, and this way we can track that. So we actually have a Yabukita Hasegawa up on the page right now, and that's actually from an abandoned tea garden that he reclaimed, and he grew spray-free just for JagaSilk, and JagaSilk buys everything that he produces there. So that's another fun one. So anyway, I hope that was interesting for you. That's our 15 minutes today. I wanted to show you a little bit about what we're doing here at JagaSilk with those two mills, and I'm really interested in your thoughts. We'll see you again next Thursday at 2 o'clock on JagaVision, and until then, peace. Take care.